was having a conversation with somebody recently. Not an argument, but maybe a debate about political topic. Not really relevant what it was. But I made a realization during it that I think is true. I guess I should call it a hypothesis. But it was a little bit contentious, and I was trying to practice what I preach in terms of keeping my emotions in check and trying not to get overexcited and really listen, try and learn, understand the other perspective, and respond accordingly. But while at the same time trying to make some points and communicate some thoughts that I had for discussion. But what I found happening was the other person would make certain statements or proclamations or state some views that they had, beliefs or views that they had. And I would kind of take that and say, okay, I feel like I understand that logic, I understand that math. Let me now respond to that. Let me ask some questions or make some statements based around that belief you just told me you have. But what the other person started doing was they would either retract that belief or change it in some way. And they did that a few times. And as they did it, I found myself getting frustrated, naturally. And the sense I had was like, hey, you're being difficult. You're kind of breaking the rules, if you will, right? Like we're having this conversation, and I'm trying to look at it very logically, very rationally, very analytically, understand what you're saying, and then test it a little bit, through the conversation and through the questioning. And the only way you can do that is if you give me something to test and then we test it. If you keep changing it as we're going, it doesn't work. So again, my frustration was we had a very logical approach to this and the other person wasn't cooperating. And, my first thought, again, perhaps they're trying to be difficult. Perhaps they're doing it somewhat out of spite. Perhaps they're doing it out of emotion, whatever. But whatever the case, it makes it difficult for us to do this. And I actually said to them at one point, like, if you're going to keep changing your views, I'm not sure we can really talk through this because it just doesn't work. I need to be able to anchor on something to understand what you think, and then we could talk about it. And, that was probably the most frustrated I got in the conversation and in that statement that I just made. And my inclination and what I would have done historically would have been to, probably get angry, double down on that, maybe start shouting a little bit myself or expressing that frustration and letting it be known that I didn't appreciate that they were breaking those rules in the process. So I don't want to give myself too much credit. I didn't realize this in the conversation, but when I kind of thought about it afterwards, I started to realize it. What was really going on there? Again, was the person breaking the rules intentionally? Why were they doing that? What was the reason? Because me getting frustrated, me getting angry, that's not going to help anything. What I need to understand is what was the logic behind them changing their beliefs and changing their views, seemingly. And my hypothesis became was when that person was doing that, and I don't think this is in all cases that people do that, but I think there is a situation or a common occurrence that happens where somebody will do that because there is some inconvenient truth that they have that they either are unable to articulate, is too close to their identity and they just have a blind spot or a bias to it, or it's just too hard for them to even accept and acknowledge, right? Maybe it's subconscious to them, in that blind spot manner. But that's what I believe is actually happening, at least was happening in this situation. Again, it wasn't that the person was trying to be difficult. It wasn't that the person was intentionally trying to break the rules and disrupt the conversation. It wasn't that they were just trying to win even. I mean, maybe there's degrees of that, but I genuinely believe what was happening was they didn't understand it. They couldn't, right? They were switching what they were saying because they were trying to make sense of it. They were trying to make sense of the argument. And when we got into the mud a little bit and started questioning and it became clear that doesn't really hold, it doesn't make sense, there must be something more to it, they had two choices. They could stick to what they said they believed and try and get deeper into it and find that inconvenient truth that they could share, and then it would make sense and we would still be kind of going down a logical path. Or their mind could kick in and say, hey, this feels uncomfortable. This feels like it's too close to my ego in some way, or just not something I want to explore. So I'll just shift. I'll just say, no, that's not true. That's not what I think. I think this. And then you don't have to worry about it. Then it seemingly, corrects itself and you can go down the path. And I think it happens all the time in conversations as I think about it, as almost just a natural, I guess, defense mechanism more than anything. But it's important to note that, right? It's important to note that, not just to diagnose it and say, oh, that's cool, that's an interesting observation, but to have that conversation, right? For me, it allows me to control my frustration more because I can see, okay, I see why this is happening. It's not just to frustrate me. It's not, bad faith, or somebody just trying to be difficult. But also, when I'm trying to determine how do I respond to this, that's an important realization too, because it tells me there's something more there, but it also tells me that it's sensitive. So if I push too hard in the wrong way, I'm probably going to get a kickback, or I'm going to get something, the person's just going to shut down. Versus if I understand and appreciate, like, I see, this is sensitive, this is tied to their identity, I'll tread lightly. I'll maybe take the approach of, hey, this is going to have to happen over multiple conversations. All different things I'll try and do to de-escalate, remove the emotional charge as a result of that. So, it's a maybe a small example, but it's an example in conversations where the active approach you need to be taking, right? When you're listening and you're learning, it's not just about the content that they're saying and their beliefs, it's the why behind it. It's the next level why behind that, and then the third level why behind that. It's understanding that bigger picture perspective, just like we should be doing with ourselves, where we're questioning and trying to understand and really figure out the math behind our views and our beliefs. You have to be doing that with the other person as well. And you have to do it in good faith. Don't just take the bait or take the obvious little things that seem like, oh, they're being pains in the asses or whatever, so I'm going to get angry. That's simple, easy, unproductive way to go. Really try and understand it. Why are they doing that? What else is at play here? And that, in theory, should lead to the most productive conversations.